Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we interview Dr. Stan Tatkin, who is a thought leader in the field of relationship wellness. And he talks about the concept of thirds, that our relationship is the primary.
Relationships begin and end with ideas, with dreams. You and I are dreaming something different. What could go wrong?
And how dependent we are on each other to be well, to be happy, to survive.
Your lives depend on each other.
Yeah.
And that's no joke. And that is no joke.
Yeah.
I mean,
so stay tuned and you're going to learn a lot about having a happy, healthy relationship.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tatkin.Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin, and we are excited to have a guest on that we've had a couple times now. Actually, this is his third time. Dr. Stan Tatkin. He is a thought leader in the field of relationship wellness. Published best-selling author, has a number of incredible books that we'll be plugging in our show notes. He's the founder of the Pact Institute, and Tara and I were just lucky enough a few years ago to go on a retreat with him and his wife Tracy, and just an incredibly wonderful, just human being. And thank you so much, Dr. Stan, for coming back on again.
thank you. It's good to see both of you again.
You too. So for people who are not in this field, Dr. Stan Tatkin is known as like the mad scientist of relationships. And really his passion is helping couples understand what it takes to make relationships healthy, to keep it going, because we know that they're really hard. And again, my experience with EJ on his retreat in Spain was just the way Dr. Stan does it and teaches us feels so natural. And there's so many components behind it that we are just so grateful to have him today. And yes, we're going to pick his brain.
Yeah. So Stan, do you mind just, for somebody who's jumping in here, listening for the first time, hasn't heard you on our previous episodes, could you, just tell us a little bit about yourself and, why you do what you do?
I do what I do. I wonder that's myself sometimes. How do I do what I do? Well, let's see. Do you want me to start at my birth, or where would you like me to start here?
Let's start with just emerging into the field, like why you chose it in the first place.
It's interesting. I don't think I would have ever guessed that I would end up where I am at any time. The fog of the present, fog of the future, right? You don't know until you look back and go, oh, that makes sense. Mm. So it's been a windy road here professionally. And I ended up with couples because I became fascinated with prevention work and wanting to work with infant mother or infant father pairs to start very, very early at infancy. So I started studying babies. I'd been doing a lot of other work prior to this, but I was also deeply immersed in neuroscience and the autonomic nervous system. And so when I couldn't get enough people to come in with their babies because we don't have a prevention-leaning culture here, I decided to turn my eyes toward adult pair bonding and stuck with it with couples and applied everything that I knew with infant brain development, adult brain development, autonomic nervous system, all of that stuff, attachment, and I applied it to adult coupling. And now I expanded that beyond coupling because there are people who have different arrangements that is more than two people.
Our impression early on and just, kind of getting to know your work and then eventually getting to know you is, you really, it seems like you bridge the gap between, real practical, hey, here's what you have to do to have a healthy, loving relationship with like the neurobiology, the real just science of how our brains and how we as humans work.
Yes.
Do you mind just talking a little bit about that?
Well, teacher teaches what the teacher needs to know, right? And so I became fascinated with the brain, with science, when I was a clinician, which is, at that time I was coming out of the music business. So I was still a musician thinking this way, not that way. When I got into the brain, when I got into the nervous system and development, I was a pathway to understand myself as well. And I started to love the idea of prevention, starting with the couple, because happy couple, happy kids, right? So that served a lot of different interests in me. And then during COVID, when everybody was sequestered and there was a lot going on, I started to think about the human condition. I started to think more about all people, all human primates, and not simply, Western, minded people who are dealing with things that we talk about constantly, psychopathology and medications and this disorder, this attachment orientation, that attachment orientation. And I started to see that the big problem here isn't him or her or islands or waves or personality disorders. The real problem is the human primate. That if you're a human primate, you're difficult.
And then you put two of them together, and it's
now you put two or more together.
And two or more together.
Yes, because we're so oriented, we're so wired to group and to be interdependent and to depend. Actually, from the very beginning, we're not hyenas. We don't roam alone. We pair bond in groups. So we have this attachment biology that holds us together, which is great under some circumstances, not so great under other circumstances. And we're problematic creatures when it comes to social emotional interactions and development. We're often too pro-self for our survival, and not easily tipped out of pro-social and pro-relationship if we're under threat.
So, we have a couples counseling center here in Tucson. We've had thousands of couples go through our doors and do the work. And, the idea of thirds, right, that you have developed, like we see that all the time coming in where it's kids or emotional affairs or physical affairs and something's happening. But a couple comes in normally during crisis, not for preventative means. And they feel disconnected and the trust is broken. And we try to help them understand, right, the importance of prioritizing their relationship to manage everything. But we thought maybe today the topic could be a little bit around thirds because we see it so often.
Yes, it is. It is a repeatable problem, and it's ubiquitous and in our practice.
Yeah.
And it is something to parse and discuss. There is this thing that seems to be part of our DNA, and that is this idea of pair bonding, that we're dyadic. We're dyadically oriented from the very beginning because of how dependent we are at birth, right? We're the only mammal that really can't survive outside of the womb without there being some adult figure, right? And so there's this primal dependency need, survival need, that starts with the first person that we depend on. Could be mother, could be father, it could be anybody, right? In Tarzan's case, it could be a monkey, it could be an ape, it could be whatever, but we need someone to make sure we survive. And that dyadic nature seems to continue throughout adulthood, even though developmentally we know that at a certain age, children go from 2s to 3s. In other words, they go from intense orbits with their primary attachment figure, usually mother, not always. And then they begin to spread out and lose mother as having sole ownership of that relationship. And that's a loss that they incur, that they have to grieve and they have to move through. It's a milestone. and then they go on to groups, right?
Yep.
However, we go back in this primary attachment romantic relationship to this expectation of being primary. And that's where people can run into trouble. So you and I are in a primary romantic relationship. But when I say primary, we begin to expect that we're primary. We're not going to cheat. We're not going to cause each other to feel threatened by jealousy. And so what is jealousy? Jealousy is a triadic situation where I'm threatened by something or someone that could take what I have already away, right? So jealousy is triadic, threes. You threaten to take what I already have from me, therefore I'm jealous. Envy is dyadic. You have something I want, right? That's different.
Right.
So in love relationships that are dyadically oriented, the interruption or intrusion of a third person, task, thing, activity, preoccupation, steals the primacy away from the other partner, or the partner feels that this third thing is competing for what they believe is theirs. And that's how we start to feel jealous. It's a different way of looking at jealousy. Instead of the person is immature and has a problem, the one who feels jealous, we look to the other person, the partner, as creating a situation that is threatening to their partner.
And so is it about attention? Is it about that one person is giving attention that the other person expects or wants?
Could be attention, could be time, could be money, could be information, could be, all of these things. How come this person gets that? I'm supposed to be the first to know. Why are you cloaking this person? Why aren't I able to see your relationship with them? You're leaving it up to my negativistic mind, my brain that has a negativity bias to make things up. That's not good. It's not good for me or you, right? If it's a child, that's really bad for the child. The child is an innocent third. But I start to dislike the child because of how you are managing this relationship with me, right? It has nothing to do with the child. So this goes all the way back to Marie Bowen. It goes back even further on this idea of dyads and triads and jealousy and how humans actually do react to the intrusion of third things and third people. Even in polygamous cultures and polyamorous cultures, there tends to be pair bonding within those. And the primaries exist, we know, when they're broken up, when the system is broken up, the people pick their primaries. They stay with them. Those are the people we run to when we're most in pain, right? For relief. Anyway, you were going to say something.
So is it a natural thing? Because you're saying like, okay, we have a natural thing where we want to pair up. But inevitably there's a third comes in, whether it's a child or a hobby or a friend or whatever.
Career.
So is it a natural thing for a third to come in, or is it like sort of using another one of your ideas, is it a lack of a clear agreement that leads to the disruption of a third?
Thirds exist. You can't get rid of them, just like air hopefully exists if we want to survive. But thirds exist, right? We're just talking about an element that's disruptive to at least one partner. Disruptive to at least one partner. So let's take alcohol. What bothers me about your drinking is that you change. You're not the same you, right? And I don't like that. I feel the alcohol is stealing from me. You have a relationship with this, and you're unavailable to me. You're obnoxious. You're sloshy. You're a party of one. You're whatever. That's a legitimate complaint about mismanagement of thirds. The person who is mismanaging is the person who's drinking and not attending to the fact that this is a disruptor in the safety and security system.
And because normally in that situation, the other person gets reactive because it's probably their own shame and guilt through their own substance abuse. And so that's like, they just don't understand that concept. And so that reactivity is, well, what brings couples in. And it also is what tears them apart. Like, it's like, how are you guys on different teams right now? Like, you chose this person and somehow you're so far apart.
Here's another example, and this is a tough one. People who mismanage thirds from the very beginning, starting with the wedding or just before, where one partner does not protect their non-blood partner from their blood relatives or their besties, right? And so what people don't understand is that with any dyad, there's an attempt to split the dyad from all corners of life. Children are known splitters, right? It's because of opportunism, right? If I can get something from EJ without Tara knowing, because I can split the two of them, I'll do it. It's a good gig, right?
Absolutely.
And so partners are supposed to be partners with social contracts, agreements that keep them safe from each other and everyone else.
Yeah.
And yet, there's a lot of exposure with people who don't know better and partners that feel thrown under the bus from the very beginning and become triangulated and basically vilified because they're targets, right? If you're an outsider, you're a target. And those mistakes are really hard to repair if they keep repeating because it feels like treason to the partner that was thrown over. And so this is really an education thing. Well, the other thing for us therapists, if we talk shop for a moment, what the beauty of thinking about thirds is it takes us out of the business of being drug counselors or sex addiction therapists or anything like that, because we're dealing with thirds. It doesn't matter whether it's a person or a drug or it's work or porn or your mother or right. It doesn't really matter. And it takes that pressure off of us to put a hat on that could actually split the two of them.
Well, and it also, I mean, I think, as you explain it, it just sort of normalizes it, yes. and I think like so much of like couples counseling at least at the initial stage with people is saying like, hey, this problem you have is absolutely normal. We want to pair up, you have these expectations. It's inevitable that there's something that's gonna grab your attention, a shiny object, whatever. So, okay, this is normal.
Yes.
Then, I guess that's where's that next step in helping the couples adapt to this normal challenge that they're going to have?
I think relationships begin and end with ideas, with dreams, imagination, pictures, big ideas. They're not the letter of the law. Relationships don't exist in the physical world. It's an abstraction. You can't take a picture of a relationship, only people. So a relationship is made up. It's a shared, or should be a shared mythology. I say shared because if you and I are dreaming something different, what could go wrong? A lot of things.
A lot of things, yeah.
So in business, or if we were starting a band, you'd know the purpose of the band that you're joining. You'd know what we're playing. You know what the vision is. We want to get a record deal, right? And so you're on board. But love relationships, we don't do that. No. We come to the table with all sorts of fantasies, expectations, fairy tales, entitlements from our family of origin, and we do not align to make sure that we're dreaming the same dream, which is essential. Why are we? And not what are we simply, but why are we? Love cannot be the reason, because love gets us in the door. It doesn't keep us in the room, right? There has to be an arrangement, an organization. We have to create something out of whole cloth. Otherwise, it's the Wild West. Otherwise, who knows how we're operating? We're pointing in different directions. So organization, dreaming, coming up with a vision. What are we? I happen to like, for me, a picture of Tracy and I are at the top of the food chain. We're responsible and we're in charge of everyone and everything.
Yeah.
We're partners in crime. We're generals, two bosses, two leaders, two executives.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we have a responsibility to work well together and to be happy, right? That's a duty. Because if we're not working well together, everything and everyone else suffers with that logic, with that picture, with that image. So we create something greater than ourselves, the union that exists in our heads. And then we raise the bar and co-create principles of how we're going to protect each other from each other.
Yeah.
Because we're animals, folks.
Yep.
And catch us on a good day, we're nice. Catch us on a bad day, you may not want to be in a relationship with us, right? The off the factory line human primate is not great, especially if threatened. And so just imagine giving your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old all the authority to run the house and have an AK-47, you'd be dead. So, as lovely as they are. So, adults are just a little bit, have a pad away from that 3-year-old, right? That impulsive, angry, I want what I want. I'll show you, and so, without agreements of how you and I are going to govern each other, we cannot be safe.
Right.
And people just don't plan for their devils, which devils we can be if the conditions are a certain way. And we don't know what those conditions will be because we're not in them yet. So I think taking the long way to answer your question, I think the answer is, what's the big idea that we're operating under? Why do we exist? What's the point of our union, our alliance? If it had nothing to do with emotion, it has to be based on purpose. We decide what's right, what's good, what's best. We decide it, nobody else. Mm-hmm. We buy it completely, drink the Kool-Aid on it, and then we give each other permission to enforce.
Yeah.
So this is how we accomplish what we want and how we keep from doing what we don't want that is poison to our safety and security, right? It's all by agreement. It's all by social contract.
And I love that too, because there can't be an identified client in that system. And when we have couples present with their suffering, it's like there's usually one person that's the identified client and it's my fault. But that whole idea of how do we protect one another from each other, yes. it helps.
They have to do that. So we're dealing with a system, a team. This is a team sport, not a solo sport. And my image that I hold in mind and that I use quite a bit is that of a 3-legged race. If you were to tie your inner legs together for a month, would you understand what a 2-person system really is? A team. You would, because you couldn't go anywhere unless you bargain, negotiate, unless you move together properly, right? You would be fighting. You pull in different directions. One person go too fast, you both fall. You would eat. You wouldn't go to the bathroom, wouldn't drink, right? So you would get the idea that, we're separate individuals who are interdependent. Therefore, we can't make anything. We can't solve problems unless we work together and make sure that neither of us loses.
Well, and knowing where you're going, right? Because that metaphor works perfectly for me. Because it's I can't in a 3-legged race with Tara, we can't win or get to the end of the race if we don't know where the finish line is, And it sounds like a part of this is clarifying. Okay, there's going to be other things that get our attention. We're going to have other likes. We're going to have things we get fascinated with. We're going to bond with other human beings. What are the clear rules of the game? What is the type of relationship we want to have?
Yes. And if we're 2 generals, we have to, or 2 legislators, we're responsible for the end result.
Yeah.
Neither of us can be blamed individually because we're both adults. We're both the drivers. We both created this thing. If it flops, It's on both of us, not
and
one
we
of
might
us.
have different perceptions, and we might have different
But we do
ideas
have
of
different
exactly.
perceptions.
And we certainly have different models growing up and everything. But this is exactly what's so interesting about how relationships are something that's so every culture does them, right, for the most part.
Yes.
And yet we do no agreeing ahead of time about what the rules are. We just assume for some reason that we all have the same perception.
Yes. And if we're embedded in a tribe, let's say the rules are set, so we don't have to think about them, right? In certain cultures, the governance is basically either history or a leader of some kind, or religion, a way of life that we've always done, right? Culture drives behavior. And a couple is no different. A couple has to create their culture, what we're going to do, what we're never going to do. What is our ethos?
Yeah.
What do we believe in, right? How are we going to comport ourselves in terms of fairness and justice? Because that's going to be really important. Any system that's too unfair or unjust will fail.
Yeah.
Will fail if it's in a free and fair union, right? So, yeah. So people have to look at this in terms of not just love relationship, but how all unions have succeeded and failed throughout time. It's always the same. It's always the same.
I feel like if everyone just knew this and understood this, it would feel so much easier than it does now, because it's like that my way or the highway thinking, feeling, attitude, because it's like, well, why is this so hard? Like everything you say makes so much sense and I absorb all of it. And it's like, yes, but it's like the hardest thing in the world for couples to grasp. It's like they're letting go, or they're like succumbing to like the other person.
Each come to the table with different capacities, socially, emotionally, and this is where the brain and development comes in. But also in terms of being able to understand how teams work. So there are people who don't want to be on a team; they'd rather play solo. Or people who want to drive and not let the other person drive; they have to be a passenger.
Yeah.
I don't really care how people arrange their relationship. I care that they are agreeing and they're thinking about this fully and not just saying yes because they're afraid of losing their gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad life. And so it is hard. I mean, I got to tell you, this all makes sense, but it is hard to do because of our nature. We're easily threatened. We want to survive. We want to protect our interests when we feel we're not safe. We're selfish and self-centered. We're opportunistic and exploitive. We're xenophobic and racist. This is our lot, as a species. Mm-hmm. The only thing that keeps us from tearing the house down, burning it down, are social contracts, our agreements. I won't do that. You won't do that. Now we can sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, and as I'm piecing this all together, also like the secularization of America, at least, as because there used to be, when we were much more tied to religion, there were like very clear expectations, maybe, or at least more clear. And now with such a huge section of the population like not having that, we're even more like unbound as far as making agreements with each other, because we don't even know what the rules are. They're all assumed. But we're not part of institutions also that clearly define them.
The problem, religion was needed at a time when people were doing awful things to each other, and there was no way to civilize people. So what better thing to scare people with a tablet that was carved by God, right, on a mount that said, "Thou shalt not kill," right? Otherwise you'll be smited, right? The Old Testament God would definitely hurt you if you didn't pay attention, right? So that put order, right? That allowed people to work together, live together, not covet each other's wives, right? And do stuff like that. Unfortunately, religion also became very masculine and very, very, patriarchal. And so a lot of the rules about marriage and relationship, deeply unfair, deeply unfair. And so here we still have a problem of self-organizing. What do you and I think is right? What do you and I think is fair? How should you and I operate? That's a whole different thing. And not everybody's willing to do that, right? Willing to do that.
So what are the tools that when you've gotten this concept through to a couple and you get into because you said, I don't care what their vision of their relationship would be. No. I just want it to be united. So what are the tools that you give a couple to say like, hey, here's how you create your shared vision, agreement, perception of what your relationship is going to be?
Well, I'll start, and this was a big problem for me because it was a learning curve because I shifted strongly to social justice theory and social contract theory during COVID. And so how do I teach this? How do I do this? How do I do this without making people frustrated, right? So I might ask them in the first session, what do you both of you put at the highest priority in terms of how your union runs, right? So I give the example, you may have heard politicians say, I'm a Christian first, I'm a Republican second, and I'm an American third. I've heard that many times. The nice thing about that is they're telling you how they're going to make decisions. Yeah. How are you going to make decision? What comes at the top? Is it your kids? Is it yourself? Is it your religion? Is it the union you're co-creating? Is it your family of origin? What is it? Right? And then I'll usually hear two different things. One person says the kids come first. Yeah. Another person says the relationship comes first. Now we have an organizational problem.
Right.
How are we going to make decisions that don't violate each other's ideas here? Right? We're pointing in two different directions. That won't work. So that really starts them with the idea that organization structure is there to make the trains run on time, to make them happy, to prevent unnecessary fighting, right? Otherwise, they're operating under different instructions.
Very, right.
So that's one way I'll go in. I'll ask them, where do you stand on the free flow of information? Do you believe in full transparency? And if not, if so, why? And if not, why not? So there's lots of ways to do this. We use containers. Container is something imaginary for the therapist. The two of you are arguing about how to load the dishwasher. And so the therapist might ask, don't you folks have a policy for how you're going to load the dishwasher? And they say, no. Okay, turn to each other and got 5 minutes. I want you to come up with a policy. That starts the process of having to co-construct something that works for both of them.
And do you take that strategy of like starting with simple things?
Simple,
something that's achievable.
Whatever's in front of me. Because if I don't use what's in front of me, they don't care. They have to be in some kind of pain or pressure or struggle in order for them to care for a way out, right? So that has to come first. Otherwise, it's blah, blah, blah.
So then coming back to this idea of thirds, it's getting the couple united and agreed, this is how we're going to handle this thing that keeps affecting our relationship. Why did you just have that deep breath?
Well, I just thought of just the fact that most of the time when a couple comes in, the third is already so massively disruptive that you're trying to get them to sort of like, create peace in the middle of like all out war. And and that's hard. That's a hell of a lot harder than like after you've already done the dishwasher and you're talking about it posthumously,
Well, if somebody continues to mismanage thirds, it's evident. There's enough evidence that this dog won't hunt. That this is unsustainable. That you can do whatever you want, but it won't work.
Yeah.
This is not about healthy, unhealthy. This is about what will work and what can't. ever work among human beings that are equals, right?
Is it all right if I share a little something from the retreat we went on with you? And I think, and
I was going to
correct
share
me, and you can tell me if this is, but there would be certain behaviors either that Tara and I or another couple or whatever would do, and you would comment on it in like a very like sort of, empathetic way, and why like that is not skillful. But then there would be a point sometimes where I'd hear you be like, stop that. And because
stop that.
because and I'm just thinking of when you were saying like if somebody is like chronically crossing boundaries, with another person or whatever, there's a certain point where you just have to be like, stop that.
Yes.
So that we can get back to the discussion. Like, does that, I don't know, that for some reason that just jumped out at me.
Yeah. When I get to know people and they know that I care about them, and that I do, have high regard for them, then I can take a bit of a stronger position, because this is couples work. It's not individual work, right? A couple can burn the house down before we ever get to anything, right? And so individual work is different. We're there to explore your mind. We can take as long as we want. And you can do, I'll confront you if you're doing something that's harmful to yourself, for sure. But it's your life. If you're coming as a couple, this a much more education, training, workshopping, coaching, in matters like what will work and won't work. So if you're saying you want this to work and you're doing something that goes against what will not work, then I'll speak up. I'll say something that's not going to work, or just do it. Many times I'll say, do it.
Yeah.
Because we're not dealing with things that people don't know. We're dealing with stubbornness, defensiveness. We're dealing with pride. We're dealing with all sorts of internal thinking that is penny-wise, pound-foolish. And this gig, what we're trying to get people to do, and it's a hard get, is to always do the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do.
Right.
If you want to be pro-social and pro-relationship, it's going to be harder because we're not oriented that way, usually. If we were in the military, we'd be forced to. If we were in a dance troupe, we'd be forced to, right? There are certain, if we're in cop car partners, we'd be forced to. Our lives depend on certain things. So only in couples, we're not forced to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, that's your concept of governance, right? That's if you don't have a sense of how do we govern when I am texting somebody who clearly it's disrupting our relationship, if we don't have that agreed thing that that's not okay, and if it's not okay, then this is what happens.
Yeah.
We do. It seems like, I think what you're saying is, as humans, we need governance. We need to know where the line is and what the consequence for it is. Is that accurate?
Yes. Also, in your union and in my union, everything you do affects Tara, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. If you do something that negatively affects her, we can think of that as self-harming, because you should know better. And you're doing something at her cost, which you will pay for in this game, right? There's nothing that either you can do that won't impact the other positively or negatively. Therefore, you're in each other's care. You have to think differently. It's a different orientation.
In public and in private.
What's that?
I said in public and in private. It's like my motto, because I just want to share one thing that, I have taken so many profound lessons from you, and being a marriage therapist for over 20 years, I'm like, I hadn't even scratched the surface when I met you. Like, you just taught me, I internalized so many, amazing skills. But one of the biggest things was, and I do this now in my couples work, like I ask permission if I can share this with EJ, right? Like, hey, is it okay if I share this with you? And then when I'm having couples do that in session, it's like such a sign of respect. Yes. And that just the feeling like, I've got you, you've got me, and I'm going to always check in with you to make sure I have your permission to spill this, whatever that spill is.
your lives depend on each other.
Yeah.
And that's no joke. And that is no joke.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really, really think about it, your health and happiness depends on each other. Your viability in terms of the world and success and finances, your ability to be good parents and raise children, everything depends on the two of you being happy, which you can do, and safe and secure at all times, which you can guarantee. I guarantee your felt sense of safety and security. It's my job. If I fail, it's on me. I fix it because I cannot afford for you to underperform or to be, insecure or unsafe because I lose my wing person. I lose the person who's going to have my back.
Yeah.
And so it's suicide, you see.
Yeah.
It's a different way of thinking. It still appeals to our selfishness, right? My survival depends on you. I'm going to make sure you're a pony that is well groomed and taken care of because I need you optimal because we are the team. We're running everything. The only thing that stands between my being hurt and damaged by the outside world is us, right? We are strong together. We can't have a war in our own foxhole.
No.
It is suicide.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been like the biggest, kind of game changer just for Tara and I of coming out of that retreat was about this, primary. We are the primary, like a commitment to our interdependence.
Recognizing when we hurt each other, even by just a little side glance or whatever, and coming back very quickly, right? Like Dr. Stan would say, was I just an asshole? I'm so sorry.
And trying to navigate, this is our thing, is like we've just been trying to navigate our third, which is our kids, and that kind of complication of when your third is something you both really love in different ways. And how do we somehow maintain ourselves as primary? And it's something we're still figuring out, but at least we have the concept, and we have a context to talk about it within that's really helped us.
If you go down, they're screwed. So there's so many images of this. You have to put your oxygen masks on first on each other, right?
Right.
Otherwise, you're useless to your child because you die of hypoxia. So all of this, again, with an idea, the spirit of something, that it's you and I against the world. It's you and I by agreement. We're going to be time travelers and we are committed. We know the consequences. We are committed to always make it good for each other or this won't last, right? We need this to work. And therefore, I put the relationship ahead of my being right. You say I said something. I don't argue. I'm sorry I said that. I didn't realize I did that.
I'm working on that. I'm working on that one.
I tell you, that one thing has proven to be a boon to my self-esteem because it is hard to do, right? It is hard to do with one's child, with one's partner, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't done this, right? Right. But to just say, I'm sorry to my daughter, I'm sorry I yelled. That was wrong. And I should not have done that.
Yeah.
Full stop. Nothing else. Nothing. Yeah. It's so hard to do. But what happens from that is something unexpected. Now I do expect it. And that she returns this in the same manner.
Yeah.
Right? She apologizes for what she did. And suddenly one experiences the reason we do it. There's a benefit. There's an immediate reward. We wouldn't know that unless we push through it because it is hard to do.
But it feels so safe when you're able to do it. And
well, sometimes it's though it's even hard to know you did it. That's part of it too.
Yeah, I don't have to know. If you think I did it, and I'm going to fix that because our relationship has to be such that we are friendly. We cannot afford to be adversaries, right?
Yeah.
So the relationship is protected at all times. And then when you have a culture like that, people are moved to repair because it's suddenly you feel you can't breathe. when there's a breach.
Yeah.
You start to be aware of what has always been, and that is we suffer. We suffer when there's a break in these relationships. And so this is also a way to not suffer.
Well, I loved how right there at the end, our topic was thirds, things that come in between our relationship and disrupt it. But you shifted at the end to just like a real focus on the importance of just the primary, our relationship. That it's about like how dependent we both are on our relationship being the number one priority, and that is in all of our best interests to take accountability, to clarify, what your commitments are, that yes, thirds will come in, but it's not about dealing with the thirds. It's about really being firmly rooted in the primary.
Yeah. Sharing information is the best. Sharing all information is the best guard against mismanagement of thirds, by the way. Right? Information sharing, and being quick with it, reading each other in prevents a lot of problems. It's really big it's up there on the agreement area. And so that keeps people from splitting you because the same thing you reported. By the way, our daughter just tried to tell me that you said yes, but I wanted to check with you. No, you didn't say yes. Okay, all right. I just want to let you know, heads up, because I say no. Let's go and talk to her together. So you and I decide everything. Tara, your mother's acting up and it's affecting me. But we strategize how we're going to deal with your mother together.
Yeah.
So as not to, we protect ourselves from her without harming her. We think about it, and even though you might be front facing, but we're working on everything and everyone together. We're the executives.
Yeah.
Right?
That's been a big one for us too around blended family, step family, is that you really helped me take on like the like, hey, it's your job to deal with your boys, but so Tara will say stuff to me and we'll come to agreements, and then it's my job then to go out and be the messenger. But we first are together. Even if I'm the one who's saying, hey, do A, B, and C, that we're first together.
And the fun thing about that is parenting is a couple's project, right? It's one of many you do. And it's theater. So you can think about how do we want to present this theatrically so that we trick this or these people, right? So we get them thinking the way we want them to think. Yeah. That's a higher level of strategy and being tactical. So that's the other beauty of this, is that the two of you can change how your kids are thinking about the two of you by presenting things in a particular way ahead of time, because it's theater. It's show, not tell.
All right, so we got some theater here.
Well, there's many questions, and I think for time purposes, we probably can have about
we'll just do it as a rapid fire,
rapid fire. Okay, rapid fire.
So
I talk too much, so
so we have a group of therapists here. We open it up to them to give a question they'd like to ask. We narrowed it down to 5 questions. And
Great.
So we want to give you and each of them you could probably speak for an hour on.
Easy.
Let's give us your nutshell on each question. Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. So the first one, and we actually get a lot of this, but what happens when you have one partner that doesn't want to do the work, who's already resigned, but still coming in for couples?
One partner who doesn't want to do their work is a little vague. I mean, do their work in their individual therapy, you mean?
What do you do when one member of the couple is resistant to change?
What I make very clear is that neither of you should be in the business of changing the other, that you are together as two different people who are always going to be disappointing and irritating and annoying. What you're having to change is the way you do business. That has to change, not who you are. And that just makes more sense to people when I say that, because it's the manner in which you interact that won't work. It's not who you are. It's the manner in which you interact with each other that is reckless and threatening. It can't ever work. Not in any planet, on any planet, right? Not
Right.
just you. That's me too. Everybody do this. This happens. That happens, right? And so I make it very clear that this isn't personal. This isn't about changing. You don't go into this to be a different person. You want to be exactly who you are and accept it. But that doesn't mean you can violate another person's rights or sensibilities.
Right.
It won't work.
Yeah. I like that. Just not bringing it in personally. This is about you.
If I'm too unfair to you, EJ, and I'm happy to just be unfair and everything. If I were smart, I should keep an eye open at night because that's not going to bode well for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Love that. How do you get trust back when it has been broken? I know that's
There's trust and there's trust. The most damaging is the reveal of vital information that, had I known, would have changed everything.
Yeah.
So when I'm left out lying by omission, whether it's an affair or an offshore account, or you've been talking trash about me to somebody, that will actually cause PTSD, especially if it's been going on a long time. So if you leave me out of vital information, several things happen. One is I'll have PTSD symptoms of mood instability, sleeplessness, and so on, flashbacks, paranoia, all that. And also, I can't trust you again. So there's no reason. You've offered proof that you're not reliable, trustworthy. You can lie to my face. You can gaslight me. I don't know who you are anymore. I thought I did. I don't know who I am. I don't know what we are. And so I'm upside down. In those instances, it has to be put together in a very, very particular way, or it'll not go away. It takes about a year to solve that one.
Yeah.
But basically, if I broke trust with you, I can't use words. I have to show you again and again
actions
that I know, I understand, I know what I did. You can be, and there's no statute of limitations on harm I do to you. I will always apologize. I will never say, "Oh, come on, when you're going to let this go?"
Oh,
right?
yes, exactly.
It's just not right? It's morally, it's improper. So again, we're dealing with things we actually know from childhood, in kindergarten, about fair play and cooperation, collaboration. We just don't think we should have to do it.
Exactly. So I like this question because again, you love prevention. We love prevention. I wish more couples would come in preventatively, but a few suggestions that you would give a couple early in the relationship.
By low, sell high. Early in the relationship is to really create something. This is your creation. It's like a slab of clay between the two of you. You're the artists. You're shaping it in your image. You're shaping it according to what you think is great life.
Yeah.
Don't, think big and place the bar high. Think big and place the bar high. And do not be lazy or shiftless about agreements, because you'll pay the price. The reason people don't keep agreements is they were made poorly. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so great. Find out the truth, because the attachment system will will make us bend reality in order to avoid loss.
Absolutely. Yeah. This could be like a whole 3-part series podcast, Dr. Stan, but just anything that comes to your mind when you hear this. But And this is, I would say, 60% of our couples, perhaps. How do you get intimacy back after having kids and there's just pure exhaustion and there's like not enough of you to go around anymore? Is there just a simple answer, please?
The partners are responsible for resourcing each other.
Yeah.
And usually they drop each other as girlfriend and boyfriend or boyfriend and boyfriend, right? They drop each other as the couple that's running the show.
Yeah.
Therefore, intimacy can be lying together in bed, exhausted, staring at the ceiling, and just being quiet together, holding hands.
Yeah.
You'll resource each other just doing that. Doesn't take much for two people to resource each other. No demands, no expectations, no performance issues. We're just hanging together, shooting the breeze.
Yeah, just like a shared feeling.
Maybe we're looking at each other. Maybe we're looking at each other saying, God, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. You're such a great dad. You're such a great mom. I'm so lucky to have you. Things that this is fuel that we need,
Yes.
water, food we need to do everything we have set to do. It just doesn't happen, right? We have to resource each other. We have to have fun. We have to have time alone. We have to get to know each other again and again and again and again and again, because the automatic brain fools us into thinking we know when we don't.
Yeah.
I love that, resourcing each other. We don't even see it like that, but just the feeling of that is so beautiful.
Well, and that felt actionable to me. Get to know each other again and again and again. Like I can work with that this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you guys know, do you know her first crush, the name of her first crush?
First crush.
Do you know the name of the person that he first kissed?
I do.
No, you don't.
Joy.
No. Yoko.
Yoko. Oh, no. This was your last book, right? Become an expert on your partner.
Maybe that should be.
Oh, I love that.
Josh is just.
Yes, it was Josh. You're right.
I see. I got her. She didn't know Yoko though. Stan, what's up?
Pillow talk is, and this is what we used to do. We say, now, what was your most embarrassing time in childhood? And then we talk about our most embarrassing times. We've lived a long time. There's no way we know each other that well. We're still getting to know each other, and that's fun. And it's also, by the way, we do tend to express more vasopressin, oxytocin, neuropeptides that bond us, just like orgasms do.
Yeah.
Right? We know this. So intimacy isn't necessarily a motor active, high sympathetic activity. It can be very parasympathetic and energy conserving, period.
Yeah.
Just be together.
I love that. I feel like that's a great place to end. I don't want to ask anymore. This is like perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stan. We're just like so grateful that you've made the time, a number of times now to come on, and you just have a great blend of head and heart, so thank you.
And we do want to have you and Tracy on together.
Well, she's great.
She said, absolutely, Tara. So in the next year, we want to have you and Tracy together because you guys were so cute together when you were hosting that retreat. And you guys, I could see how you would help each other out. And she would come and tell you and tap on the shoulder like, Stan, you're over talking now. We've got to stay on track.
We've done this. You've probably not seen it, but we've done things where she's told me something to do, or I've told her something to do because we give each other permission to boss each other around. And she'll react sometimes after I tell her. She'll just do this in the background, and I'll just do this, and it's play. People will see us doing it. Go, I didn't know you could do that and still get along. Yeah. Yeah, if you're friends. And
for those of you who are watching that who are not watching that on YouTube, it's just Dr. Stan scratching his face with the middle finger.
Middle finger, yeah. Just a playful way of protesting.
Yeah, I like that. A playful way of protesting.
But still cooperating.
That's another good title for your next book, Playful Protesting. Okay, I'll stop.
Playful protesting. Anyway, it's wonderful to see the two of you. I love you both.
I know. We love you too. And just can't wait to, I'm just thank you. I'm so grateful for all of your wisdom, knowledge, research, the work you did with us and with other couples. And just the energy of you and Tracy together is such a beautiful, safe, like I just really admire you're very big role models to me in this profession and as a couple. Thank you.
We've lost 3 people. Sue Johnson.
I know.
My friend, co-author and mentor, Marion Solomon, died yesterday, and that
I'm sorry.
I'm brokenhearted. And Habib Davanloo, who I thought was actually dead, but he's now dead.
Oh my gosh!
He was dead before. So 3 people in our field that are leaders. Yeah.
I know. So Sue, I did my master's thesis with Sue's work, and I was heartbroken when I found out I didn't even know she was struggling with cancer, but
she'd been ill for a while. Yeah. Anyway. All right. I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stan. And absolutely, just to our audience, we'll make sure that we have links out to Stan's website and to your last couple books, and definitely an amazing resource to tap into. So thank you with your generosity of your time.
Thank you, listeners out there. If you have anything you would like to share after listening to this, please, we respond to all of your emails. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. You deserve it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.